did you do early on that kept you financially stable and now financially flourishing at this point in your life?
So what I did was find another passion. All my dreams that I thought were dreams turned out to be nightmares. And I figured out the biggest value and purpose in life is that it has nothing to do with money or buying all. I was young, manipulated.
Vanilla Ice just dropped some jaw-dropping claims that could change how you see the entire music industry forever. Forget what you think you know about talent, hard work, or even shady business deals. According to Vanilla Ice, there's a whole other side to the entertainment world, one wrapped in secrecy, manipulation, and demands that go far beyond anything most of us could imagine. And when he decided to break his silence, he wasn't just spilling gossip. He was pointing the finger straight at two of the biggest names in the game, Jay-Z and Diddy. Back in the early 90s, Vanilla Ice wasn't just famous, he was a cultural explosion. A walking, talking phenomenon that dominated every inch of pop culture, and it all seemed almost too good to be true. Like one day, he was just another guy chasing a dream, and the next he was a household name, topping charts, selling out stadiums, breaking records, and making headlines faster than anyone could keep up, with Ice Ice Baby blasting from every speaker and his face splashed across every magazine cover from Rolling Stone to teen fan mags you'd find in every grocery store aisle, and to the outside world, it looked like he had it all. Money, fame, adoration, but behind the scenes, the story was already beginning to shift, because the more success he tasted, the more he realized there were invisible hands pulling the strings, secret conversations that didn't involve music or image or even business, but something else entirely, something he couldn't quite put his finger on at first, just an uncomfortable feeling that certain doors only opened if you were willing to do things that had nothing to do with talent. And while the cameras loved him and the fans screamed his name, in the shadows, powerful figures were sizing him up, deciding whether he could be molded, controlled, or coerced into something much bigger and much more dangerous than just a pop star.
What happens is, in order for that artist to be in position to even mislead the people, they have to be worthy. This is hazing. This is the hazing aspect of it. In order to climb the ladder in the music industry, you have to be hazed. And when you're getting hazed, you're getting in your
You say like basically
this homosexual ritual.
It started off small, little things that most people wouldn't even notice at first, like getting invited to exclusive parties where the vibe felt off, like the smiles were too forced and the conversations a little too coded, and Vanilla Ice, still riding high on his newfound fame, thought maybe it was just how the industry worked, maybe this was just part of being in the big leagues, but then the invitations started getting stranger. Offers that didn't really sound like business meetings, more like secret gatherings that only certain people got into, and the more he was around it, the more he started to sense there was a hidden game being played, one that had nothing to do with selling records or entertaining fans, and it wasn't just about being successful, it was about belonging to something, being part of some inner circle where the rules were different, where loyalty wasn't just expected but demanded. And the price for entry wasn't money or talent, but something much more personal, something you couldn't undo once you gave it up. And even though nobody came out and said it directly, the pressure was real, like an invisible weight constantly pushing him toward choices he didn't want to make, choices that came dressed up as opportunities, as career boosts, but deep down, he knew they were traps. And it was in those early moments, standing on the edge of rooms filled with fake smiles and heavy secrets, that Vanilla Ice first realized fame wasn't free, and the bill was coming due whether he was ready or not. At first, he tried to brush it off, convincing himself that maybe he was just being paranoid, that maybe these creepy feelings were just part of the price of doing business at the top. But that illusion shattered fast when the offers stopped being vague and started getting real, because behind closed doors, Vanilla Ice claims, there were actual conversations about rituals, about pledging loyalty in ways that had nothing to do with signing a record deal, and the things he heard weren't just unsettling, they were downright chilling. Whispers about private ceremonies, about compromising yourself in ways you couldn't take back, about proving your commitment to the family by crossing lines most people wouldn't even dream of touching. And it wasn't just rumors either, because Ice says he witnessed moments, glimpses behind the curtain where the air shifted, where powerful people hinted, not so subtly, that his skyrocketing fame could go even higher if he was willing to play ball. And the deeper he looked, the uglier it got, with talks of hazing rituals that weren't just humiliating, but deeply violating. Setups where the goal wasn't to help you, it was to break you, to own you, to force you to sacrifice not just your pride, but your very soul. And standing there staring into that darkness, he had a choice. Keep climbing and lose himself completely, or walk away and risk everything he had ever worked for. And that's when he realized that what they were offering wasn't opportunity. It was ownership. And if he said yes, he'd be theirs forever. Saying no should have been the end of it, like a simple thanks but no thanks that lets you move on with your life. But Vanilla Ice quickly found out that in this world, rejecting the offer didn't mean you got to walk away clean. Because almost immediately after he pulled back, things around him started to shift in ways that felt anything but natural. Deals that had been guaranteed suddenly fell through without explanation. People he thought were his friends started distancing themselves, acting cold, avoiding him altogether like he was toxic. And it wasn't just the business side either. There were moments when he felt like he was being watched, like shadows were following him that he couldn't quite catch, and little inconveniences turned into major problems almost overnight. Finances getting strangled, reputations getting quietly trashed behind his back, opportunities drying up faster than he could even react, and he realized that by refusing to play along, he hadn't just turned down a secret handshake. He had made himself a target, an outsider in a system that didn't forgive or forget, and every unexplained setback, every closed door, every whispered rumor felt like another warning shot telling him that walking away wasn't just bad for business, it was dangerous. It's one thing to feel the pressure coming from nameless, faceless forces in the industry, but it hits completely different when the faces aren't anonymous at all, when they belong to the biggest names in music. And according to Vanilla Ice, that's exactly what happened, because he claims that during his rise, figures like Jay-Z and Diddy weren't just fellow artists climbing the ladder, they were already positioned as gatekeepers, men who didn't just navigate the industry but helped enforce its unspoken rules. And Ice says the way they operated wasn't as simple as offering friendship or business deals, it was a lot more layered than that, with mentorships dangled like golden carrots, promising even more fame, more power, more longevity, but only if you played the game the right way, their way. And while a lot of people were eager to grab those opportunities, Vanilla Ice says he looked deeper and saw the trap for what it really was, noticing how young artists who got too close either rose fast and changed into hollow versions of themselves, or disappeared altogether once they were no longer useful. And it wasn't just a theory to him, it was a pattern he couldn't ignore. And while he never accuses Jay-Z and Diddy directly of anything criminal, he paints a picture of two men who understood exactly how the system worked, who benefited from it, and who, whether through action or silence, helped keep the machine running. And once Ice connected those dots, he realized that the forces pushing him weren't just shadows anymore, they had names. They had faces, and they were a lot closer than he had ever wanted to believe. As Vanilla Ice pulled further away from the spotlight and started piecing together the bigger picture, he says the most disturbing part wasn't just about the sacrifices artists were forced to make. It was about who else was getting caught in the crossfire, because according to him, it wasn't just grown celebrities being pushed around and broken down. It was young, vulnerable kids too. New talents with stars in their eyes who didn't know any better, getting groomed, manipulated, and chewed up by a system that promised them the world and then stripped away their innocence piece by piece. And Ice hints that he saw things he wishes he could unsee, quiet transactions, inappropriate relationships masked as mentorships, emotional and mental manipulation so brutal it left these young artists completely hollowed out. And he talks about it like a cycle, a cold, calculated process where promising kids were first flattered, then isolated, then remade into puppets who would do anything just to survive. And once they were no longer useful, they were discarded like broken toys. And the way he tells it, it wasn't just a few bad actors or isolated incidents. It was systemic, baked into the very foundation of how the industry kept itself alive. And realizing that made him feel even more certain that walking away wasn't just the right move for himself. It might have saved him from becoming another casualty in a machine that didn't just crave talent, it devoured souls. By the time it all came crashing down around him, Vanilla Ice knew that staying in the game would have meant losing every piece of himself that mattered. So instead of clinging to fame like so many others did, he made the decision most people would never even consider. He disappeared, he stepped out of the spotlight, he let go of the fame and fortune, because deep down he understood that whatever he was walking away from couldn't be worse than what would happen if he stayed. And he talks about it not like a fall from grace, not like a tragic downfall, but like a conscious, deliberate escape, a way of preserving the parts of himself that the industry couldn't buy, manipulate, or destroy. And even though the public thought he had simply faded away, Ice describes it more like he had to vanish for survival. Because once you reject the unspoken rules, once you say no to the secret deals and the dark rituals, you don't just lose your seat at the table, you become a threat to the entire system. And threats aren't treated kindly. And while he never claims anyone tried to physically harm him, the emotional, psychological, and financial warfare he hints at paints a clear picture. Once you step outside their circle, they make sure you feel the cold, hard consequences. But even after all of it, Ice says that walking away was the best decision he ever made, because fame might make you rich, but it won't save you when the real cost comes due. Looking back now, Vanilla Ice doesn't just see his story as a personal survival tale. He sees it as a warning shot to anyone still chasing the glittering dream of celebrity, because beneath the polished interviews, the red carpets, and the billion-dollar endorsements, he says there's a machine grinding people up, a hidden network built not on creativity and passion, but on control, exploitation, and silent obedience. And the more you dig, the more you see the patterns, the sudden breakdowns, the mysterious disappearances, the artists who speak out and then vanish from the public eye as if they never existed. And Vanilla Ice's message isn't delivered like a bitter rant from a forgotten star. It's more like a man who's seen the truth up close and lived to tell about it, warning the next generation that not all success is worth chasing. That sometimes the biggest names and brightest lights are hiding the darkest shadows. And while skeptics might brush him off or chalk it up to conspiracy theories, the unease lingers because when you hear the same whispers from so many corners of the industry, you start to wonder if maybe the real story isn't the glitz and the glamour, but the unseen price that so many seem willing to pay. And as Vanilla Ice puts it, when fame demands your soul, you have to ask yourself if it was ever really yours to begin with. If you think this story is crazy, trust me, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Hit that like button if you're ready for more hidden truths, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because the deeper we dig, the darker it gets.